Number 19, the double box and whisker plot below shows the vocabulary quiz scores for Ms. Elsman's first and second period classes. Which statement about these is true? So again, we're looking for is true, not is not true. And as you can see here, on any box and whisker plot, and this is a double, you're going to have your lower extreme, your upper extreme, your medium, your inner quartile, or your lower quartile, and your upper quartile. And between here and here, you're going to have your inner quartile range, and here, you're going to have your entire range. The range in the scores was the same for both classes. Well, up here we have a range between 70 and, 95, so that's going to be 25. The range here is going to be from 75 to 100, and the difference there is 25. So it looks like we already have a choice here. Let's make sure, though. The inner quartile range and the scores was the same for both classes. The inner quartile range here is between 75 and 90, and that's 15. Let's go ahead and put that up here. The inner quartile range here is between 85 and 95, which makes that 10, so that's not a good choice. The median score was the same for both classes. Well, we can look at that and tell this one's 90, this one's 80. That's not the right choice. D, approximately 25% of the students in both classes scored a 95 or higher on the quiz. At least 25%. Well, 25% of people scored 25% or higher here, because this is 25% of the data. But up here, 95%, actually that was our highest score. So we can't say that for sure, so there's that. Choice A. A veterinarian wanted to take a census to find out the median weight of all the cats who are patients at her office. Her staff decided instead to do a random sample. In other words, they didn't have time to talk to everybody or weigh every cat. They wanted to do a random sample, and this is the key word, random here. They hope that the median of their sample data will approximate the median for the population of the patients. Which sample below is likely to have a median that closely approximates the median weight for all the cats in the population? In other words, we're looking for the middle score. Now, if we know that all these are random, and we do because it says here, we always want to go with the higher choice. Your higher sample size will always yield you better results if we know that it's random. Now, if it's not random, then you're going to have to take a look at the data even further. But always, the bigger the sample size we can get, the better. 21. Emma took a census of all the 7th graders, or all the 7th grade students, to find out how many glasses of water they drank a day. The table below shows 4 randomly selected samples from her census. Again, it says 4 randomly selected samples from the census. Based on the sample data, which of the following is most likely to be closest to the median for Emma's census? Well, again, we have a large group of data here on B. We only have 5 here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in sample C, and then we got 3. Well, D, we know that's way too small. A is way too small. C is too small. Again, it's just going with the obvious choice. The larger sample size you have is going to be better, especially if they're all random. Choice B. Here we have a 2-part question, or 22 is right here, and 23 is here. And taking a look, this is a census. And a census is an overall population. In other words, if we wanted to know what every student in Curriculum Middle School's favorite candy bar was, we would do a census. That means we'd have to ask everybody, all 1,300 kids. A more reasonable way to do that might be to do a sample. The manager of a shipping center took a census of all 30 packages that shipped this evening. The assistant manager randomly selected a sample of those packages. The stem and leaf plot below shows their data. And here we have the census, and here we have the sample. Okay. How much less is the sample mode than the census mode? Well, we got to take a look at both of these and see which one the sample or census is. Well, as we know, if we have a 0 here, that means we're just going to be looking at these digits. We have a 1 here that's 10 in the tens place. We have a 10, 10, 10, 10, 11, 12, 16, and 18, and so on. Well, if we take a close look at this data, we can see that the mode here, the number that occurs the most, is 20. The number that occurs the most down here, that's the mode. Remember, the number that occurs the most is 10. Well, it's asking us how much less is the sample mode than the census mode. So we'd have to find both and find the difference. And the difference is 10. How much greater is the range for the census than for the sample? So we're looking for the range. The range is nothing more than the difference between the smallest and largest number. Well, the range on here, we have the smallest being 2. Our largest is 40. Well, sorry, 40 minus 2 equals 38. So our range here is 38. Our range here, we start with the number 5 through 40. Well, 40 minus 5 equals 35. And again, it's asking us how much greater is the range for the census than the sample. And the difference between those two is 3. The line plot below shows the grades that Melinda scored on her last 11 spelling quizzes. She was ill one day and scored only a 50 on her quiz, and that's represented right here. And we might call that an outlier. She did pretty good in these. She had 380s, 285s, 190, 395s, and 100. If Melinda's teacher agreed to drop the 50, so we're going to get rid of that, how will that affect Melinda's mean quiz score? Well, what you'd have to do is add up an 80, an 80, an 80, an 85, an 85, and 90, and so on. And to save a little bit of time, I've already done the math, that adds up to 885. Now we have to divide that to find the mean. Now keep in mind though, we're not going to be dividing by 11. We're going to be dividing by 10 because we got rid of this guy. So we're going to be dividing by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answer. Anytime you divide any number by 10, you can just move the decimal place over. The answer is 88.5. You have to be careful not to divide by 11 again, because you're actually going to artificially lower the score than the actual mean you had before, because this time we're taking out the 50, but we're still dividing by 11. And basically what this question was asking us is, if we dropped that 50, how would it affect it? And I wanted to take a look at the new mean. Here we have a triple box and whisker plot here. Ages of Young Chef's club members. Which sample best approximates the measure of variation and central tendency of the population? Remember, measure of central tendency. Measure of central tendency. Which sample, in other words? Okay. A, the sample of 7 club members best approximates the measure of the population. In other words, what they're saying is, does this sample right here best represent this entire population? We can see you have a bunch of different numbers here. Okay, I don't think 7, at least as it relates to this one. I think 15 is actually a better choice, but let's keep going. The sample of 15 club members best approximates the measure for the population. This one looks very, very similar. You have the exact same median. You have the exact same upper extreme. You have a very, very close lower extreme and a very, very close inner quartile, or lower quartile, I should say, and exact same upper quartile. So that looks like that might be a good choice. Let's go ahead and take a look at B and C, or sorry, C and D. The two samples approximate the measures for the population equally well. If you take a look at these two, I think you can tell that these aren't equal. This one is much better to sample of 15. So let's get rid of choice C. And D, neither sample approximates the measure for the population well. You might have a circumstance where you have one like this and another one that's kind of skewed this way or kind of messed up. And neither one of them do represent. But in this case, I think this one represents this overall population. This sample represents this population very well. So we can be sure that we can choose B. Which statement is true? Let's take a look at these one at a time. The interquartile ranges for the sample of 7 and the population are identical. Well, the interquartile range is just the difference between here and here. These two lines are the difference between the lower quartile and the upper quartile. Well, obviously these two are not the same. So choice A is not right. The interquartile ranges for the sample of 15 and the population are identical. Well, that looks like it might be the case. This is from 20 down to 14, or 14 to 20. That looks like that might be a good option for us. Let's go ahead and take a look at the other ones, though. The medians for the sample of 15 and the population are identical. Now, you'll have to forgive me. Actually, B, they're not the same. I'm sorry. This one's between 20 and that looks like that's going to be 14. This one is actually 13 and 20. So obviously those are not the same. So please forgive me there. The medians are the same, though. They're both at 15. So let's take a look at that choice. And then finally, D, the first quartiles. In other words, this one right here, for the two samples and the population are all identical. Well, they're obviously not, because this one's here, this one's down here at 16, 14, and 13. So choice is C. Number 26. Henry surveyed a sample of middle school students to find out which world language they would most likely study in high school. He created a pictograph below to show, and as you can see here in the pictograph, each little stick figure represents 10 kids. Okay. The question is asking us, how many more students would like to study French than Russian? Well, French, we've got 10, 20 kids. Russian, we've got 5. And let's just go ahead and fill the other ones in too. Just in case you might have on a test or on the CRCT, you might have more questions about. I like to go ahead and fill the numbers in. This is 30. This is 10, 20, 30, 40, and 45, because we got a half a stick figure here, as here, and then instead of being a whole 10, that means it's going to be half of that, which is 5. So how many more kids wanted to learn French than Russian? French, we had 20. Russian, we had 5. 20 minus 5 is 15. The answer is 15. Here we have another pictograph. And again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to fill these guys out. I like to do that ahead of time as soon as I get the problem. Each carat represents 6 pounds. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 24 plus a half one. That's going to be 27. Here I've got 5, which is 30. Here I've got 18 plus 3 is 21, right? And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 24. This represents this many pounds. The pictograph below shows the number of pounds of carrots grown and harvested by 4 classes from a school garden. Which class harvested the greatest number of pounds of carrots? That's obvious. Number 30, it's going to be 7B. What was the total number of pounds of carrots harvested by all 4 classes? Well, in this case, we just have to add all these up, and that's going to equal 102. The bar graph shows the number of students who sing in each section of the chorus. Which section has the second greatest number of students? Well, here it looks like we got about 23, give or take. This one we got about 20. Right here we've got 12, and this one looks like right between 18 and 20. So we're probably going to be looking at about 18. Which one's the second largest, second greatest number? And that number is alto. More to come.